On today's episode, I'll break down what Blackhawks fans should be watching for during the World Juniors.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, just a quick reminder to please go and hit that like button. Jump in the comment section down below as well with Mailbag Monday right around the corner. And make sure that you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well if you haven't done so already. Really closing in on my goal of 2,000 subscribers, so would greatly appreciate it, even if you're someone who regularly listens through an audio platform. If you jumped on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button for me. And last but certainly not least, do got to let you all know, today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Check out FanDuel.com right now to win $250 worth of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. First and foremost, hope everyone's Christmas went wonderfully, filled with Blackhawks-related garb and trinkets and whatnot, and happy holidays to everyone else out there with the Blackhawks and the rest of the NHL, for that matter, still being in the holiday break. I thought it would be a good time to go over a little bit of a preview of the World Juniors, as the World Junior Championship officially got underway earlier on this afternoon in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Definitely wanted to let all you Blackhawks fans know what you should be watching for throughout the tournament over the next week or so. Sadly, unlike last year where the tournament was filled with Blackhawks prospects and we saw Frank Nazar, Oliver Moore, Sam Rinzel, and Gavin Hayes win the gold medal, and a slew of other Blackhawks prospects participating in the tournament. There are actually only going to be 2 Blackhawks prospects in the World Juniors this year. AJ Spellacy was invited to the United States World Juniors selections camp, but was among the final cuts earlier last week. That leaves only Oliver Moore as the lone member of the red, white, and blue, representing them, wearing an A as an alternate captain. The other Blackhawks prospect taking part is 2023 third-round pick Jiri Felcman, who, as I mentioned a couple of days ago when I was discussing AJ Spellacy being among the final cuts from the United States, don't really have that much exposure, admittedly, to Jiri Felcman since the Blackhawks drafted him nearly 2 years ago now. So excited to get a little bit more exposure on him here throughout the World Juniors. But yeah, only going to be Felcman and Oliver Moore as the 2 Blackhawks prospects, but still many other reasons to be watching throughout this tournament. Breaking down the 2 groups, Group A and Group B. Group A is where we'll see the United States as well as Canada, Finland, Germany, and Latvia. So definitely the more stacked of the 2 groups. Breaking down Canada's roster, where oddly enough there are no Chicago Blackhawks prospects. They're absolutely loaded up front on the offensive side of things. Bradley Nadeau, Callum Ritchie, Easton Cohen, Berkeley Catton, who I think has the capability to be the MVP of the tournament should Canada go on to win the gold. Carson Rakoff is there, Luca Pinelli, Jet Luchenko, who's a first-round pick this past year, Braden Yeager, Tanner Howe, Ethan Gauthier, Cole Baudouin was a first-round pick from this year as well. And then they also have 2025 top prospect Porter Martone, who us Blackhawks fans should be having an eye on, as well as potential 2026 #1 overall pick Gavin McKenna. So offensively, it is going to be a loaded bunch for the Canadians. But as it seems to always be for them year after year, and kind of whenever they have country, whenever they're representing their country, there's always the concerns about the defense and the goaltending. And that's going to be the same for this bunch, in my opinion. Tanner Molendyke and Sam Dickinson are the 2 that are going to be leading the way defensively for Canada, along with 2025 top prospect Matthew Schaefer. So a lot of reasons, even for us Americans, to be watching the Canadians throughout the World Juniors, with Porter Martone, Matthew Schaefer two of the likely top 4 selections in this year's draft, plus the man everyone believes is going first in 2026 in Gavin McKenna. But yeah, it feels like defense and goaltending are what's going to make or break Canada this year, and whether or not they'll be able to come away with the gold and avenge a disappointing tournament that they had last year. Carter George, prospect of the Los Angeles Kings, seems to be the one that's going to get the nod between the pipes for the Canadians. For the United States, I know I'm biased as an American, but I really do feel like they have the best and deepest roster out of any country here in this tournament and have a lot of experience coming back from the group that won gold last year. Up front, great offensive top 6 led by the BC3 with Gabe Perreault, Ryan Leonard, who was a first-round pick of the Washington Capitals, and then James Higgins, who I think is going to be the first overall pick in 2025, centering the top line for the red, white, and blue. Then Trevor Connolly, first-round pick from last year, Danny Nelson, Cole Yzerman as the second line. Oliver Moore is centering the third line for the Americans with Max Plant from Minnesota Duluth and Minnesota Golden Gophers teammate Brody Ziemer, And then on the defensive side of things, you got Cole Hudson and Zeev Buium leading the way. Drew Fortescue was a member of this team last year. And then Trey Augustine is back in net once again, probably the lead candidate to be the goaltender of the tournament. So offense, defense, and in net, I think the United States has the best roster and a real good chance for them to go back-to-back and winning the gold medal. Finland is probably the third best team here in Group A. They got Emil Hemming, Aaron Kiviharju, and Konsta Helenius, former first-round picks in the past couple NHL drafts. Those are the 3 most notable prospects for Finland, but I think all eyes, rightfully so, are going to be on the United States and Canada here in group play. Moving over to Group B, Sweden, Slovakia, Czechia are probably the 3 teams everyone's going to be keeping their eye on from this group. Switzerland has an opportunity to play Cinderella a little bit, and then Kazakhstan kind of rounds things out. Sweden, I think, undoubtedly is the top team in this group, led by Axel Sandin Palika, who had a huge performance today in their opening game. Theo Lindstein, Tom Willander, Otto Stenberg, David Edstrom, part of the Sweden squad as well, along with 2025 projected top 15, top 20 pick Victor Eklund. So I think undoubtedly Sweden has the makeup to be the third best team in the tournament behind the United States and Canada, and would not be surprised to see them facing off with whichever of those 2 teams from Group A in the gold medal game. Czechia and Slovakia are probably going to be duking it out for the second best team. Slovakia, the reason I think they'll have a chance is because they have Dalibor Dvorsky, who, funny enough, from the 2023 draft was a prospect. Some of you may remember, if you've been following and listening along with me for the last couple of years now, I wasn't really all that high on Dalibor Dvorsky, but he's absolutely proved me wrong since he's been selected. We saw him in the Tom Curvers Prospect Showcase for the St. Louis Blues. The guy can absolutely rifle the puck. He's one of the best players in the entire tournament, so if he's going, Slovakia is going to have an opportunity to hang around. Czechia, though, I do think has undoubtedly the deeper of the 2 teams and shapes up to give Sweden the best run for their money here in Group B. Michael Hrabal, who's found his footing in college hockey, is going to be in net, plus they have Adam Juracek, who's now back and healthy this year after tearing his ACL in his draft year, a prospect of the St. Louis Blues. Dominic Badinka is a high-end prospect as well. Edward Chalet is on the team for Czechia too, so I think they're shaping up to be the second best team in this group. So very excited for the World Juniors to finally be underway, even though there are only 2 Blackhawks prospects. Lots of reasons to still be watching as the Blackhawks currently sit dead last in the standings once again and are firmly going to be in the mix, it seems, for the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NHL Draft. As far as the action that we've already seen today, I referenced a moment ago Axel Sandin Palika having a huge performance in Sweden's opener. He recorded a hat trick to help them win 5-2 over Slovakia earlier on in the afternoon. That was the opening game. The second game was the United States taking on Germany. Hadn't actually finished as of the time of my recording, but there were only 3 minutes left in that game, and the United States was up 10-4. Huge offensive explosion out of them. Cole Hudson with 5 assists from the back end. James Higgins, as I mentioned, I think the guy who's going to wind up going number 1 overall with 2 points centering the top line. Gabe Perreault, who's playing on that line as well, had 2 goals. Brody Zemer had 2 goals as well. Cole Iserman found the back of the net. I actually think somehow Oliver Moore didn't wind up on the stat sheet in this 10-goal offensive output from the USA, but a real solid opener out of them, cruising past Germany in the opener. Next game is going to be Czechia taking on Switzerland, and Blackhawks prospect Jiri Felcman is going to be centering Czechia's top line. So very excited to see that game. And then the night game, the final game of the night, is going to be Finland against Canada, a banger of an opener. So super stoked that the World Juniors is back and underway. Lots for us Blackhawks fans to be watching for. There's everything that I wanted to lay out prior to the World Juniors really getting going. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll get into an update on the rest of the NHL Central Division as we've reached the holiday break. But first, I do got to talk to you all real quick about Prize Picks. If you love sports, then you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to now turn your sports knowledge into real money. Because whether it's hockey, football, or any one of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to now get in on the action. And you can win up to 1,000 times your money with Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away more than $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in the entire month of December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it so easy to cash out. You can now get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. And this week, Blackhawks fans, I'm looking at Connor Bedard to record more than 4 shots on goal when the Blackhawks take on the Buffalo Sabres, and Taylor Hall to record more than 1 assist. It's so simple and easy to make my picks and have fun with my friends while potentially cashing out fast with Prize Picks. And to join in on the fun, be sure to download the Prize Picks app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps when you download the Prize Picks app to get a free $50 when you put $5 down. Prize Picks, run your game. Segment 2, we know where the Blackhawks sit in the standings as we reach the holiday break here. Dead last, as I just mentioned a moment ago. Good reason why we should be tuning into the World Junior Championship as Blackhawks fans to get a look at some of the prospects that are going to be selected highly in the 2025 NHL Draft. But yes, even though the Blackhawks play has been better over the last couple of weeks, unfortunately, they're still dead last in the standings with 26 points. But I figured with us having a couple of days off now here with the holidays, it would be a good time to talk about how the rest of the Central Division has been going so far here up to this point in the season. Taking a look at the standings, the Winnipeg Jets have been at the top, I think, for the entire year. They currently sit 25-10-1 with 51 points. Good for second best in the entire NHL in terms of point percentage. Minnesota has been one of the best teams in the NHL all year long, right behind the Jets at 21-10-4 with 46 points. They have the 5th best points percentage in the NHL. Colorado next up, 3rd in the division at 21-15-0. Good for 42 points. Dallas right behind them at 20-13-0. They have 40 points. Utah next up right behind them, 16-12-6. Couple more games played. They have 38 points so far this year. The St. Louis Blues next up, 6th in the division, 16-16-4 with 36 points. And then the Nashville Predators. I know the Blackhawks are last, but it feels like the Predators are the biggest laughingstock in the NHL considering how much buzz they were garnering after an eventful offseason, the most notorious offseason in the history of the Nashville Predators franchise has gotten off to a terrible start. They're 11-17-7 through their opening 35 games, accumulating just 29 points. But taking a little bit of a deeper look into each of these teams, for the Winnipeg Jets, they're great on all fronts. 2nd in the NHL in goals for per game. 2nd in the NHL in goals against. We know they're always typically more known for their defensive style, but they're also best in the NHL on the man advantage so far this year. And Connor Hellebuyck is making a real case to be the NHL's MVP. He's first in the NHL in wins with 22. He's got a 22-5-1 record so far this year. First in goals against average, 2.07 GAA. First in save percentage at .927, and first in the NHL with 4 shutouts. And if you're someone who's been following this show for a long time, then you've heard me say Connor Hellebuyck is the most underappreciated player in the NHL, and he just continues to make a case for that. Simply sensational, backstopping this Winnipeg Jets team to the top of the standings all year long. It's going to be interesting to see if Winnipeg can keep this up come playoff time. That's kind of always their gripe, but boy, do they have a real good team on all fronts. Kyle Connor, one of the best goal scorers in the entire NHL, top 10 in goals and points. Mark Scheifele's having a little bit of a rejuvenation this year, up over 40 points already this season. Defensively, getting huge impacts out of Josh Morrissey, who's nearly at a point per game. Neil Pionk's been real big on the back end for them. And then they just have a great supporting cast of players. Gabe Vilardi, Nikolai Ehlers has been real good as always. Nino Niederreiter, someone who can play in the middle six and produce points on a consistent basis. Cole Perfetti has been a real good draft pick for them. Vladislav Nemesnikov's a good depth piece. Alex Iafallo. Boy, does that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade just look phenomenal for the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, Gabe Vilardi has been one of the most impactful players on the team. Alex Iafallo is another good depth piece. They have Adam Lowry still there. On the back end, they have Dylan DeMello, Logan Stanley, Dylan Samberg, like big, rugged defensemen, which is what you want come playoff time. So, yeah, the Winnipeg Jets are shaping up for a long playoff run. Can they do it? You know, that's another question, but if Connor Hellebuyck's playing the way that he is right here, right now, come playoff time, they're going to be a very, very tough team to beat. The Minnesota Wild, too, as us Blackhawks fans just saw a couple days ago, very tough team to beat, especially when you're trailing in the third period. They are such a good defensive bunch. 6th in the NHL in goals against so far this year. Offensively, they don't really do anything flashy. It's all about Kirill Kaprizov, who's making an MVP case for himself so far this season. Marco Rossi has been excellent, which I'm very happy from afar for my good buddy, Locked On Wild host Seth Topal. He's been waiting for Marco Rossi to have this type of output for years. Matt Boldy, obviously one of the few home run picks from early on in the 2019 NHL Draft. They're the leading charge for them offensively, but defense really is the name of this entire team. Obviously, you have Brock Faber on the back end. You have Jared Spurgeon. Jonas Brodin is still there. John Merrill, Jacob Middleton. Philip Gustafson is among the NHL leaders in save percentage so far this year. Marc-Andre Fleury, has been really good as a backup. So I don't know if Minnesota has enough talent offensively to go and get it done. I think they're probably going to be trying to add another good second line offensive piece prior to the Stanley Cup playoffs, but defensively and in goal, they have enough to make a long run throughout the Western Conference. Colorado, 3rd in the Central Division standings as of right now, 8th in goals for, 8th in the NHL on the power play as well. We know what they can do offensively, but defensively and in goal, kind of like Canada, those are going to be the question marks for Colorado. 26th in the NHL in goals against so far this year, just simply not good enough. Nathan MacKinnon continues to be one of the best players in the NHL, along with Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar. Those guys bring their A-game night in and night out. They're basically unstoppable. But the rest of the team, those are the guys that are really going to determine how far this group is going to go this season. Casey Middlestad, second-line center. Getting Valeri Nichushkin back is absolutely huge for them. Would be big if they could get Jonathan Drouin and Miles Wood healthy as well. Those are really big depth guys. But defensively, I don't know. I just don't have as much confidence in this team as I used to. I have confidence in Makar, Taves, Girard. I just don't know if they have 3 pairings that I can really trust in. Mackenzie Blackwood, Scott Wedgwood, and net. They made a move to kind of try and shore things up there. I think it was needed, and I like to see that they always address issues there in Colorado, which is something I like. I have confidence in their big dogs to carry them, but I don't have confidence in this group to get across the finish line with the Stanley Cup in their hands, especially when it sounds like Captain Gabe Landeskog not sounding all too confident that he's going to come back. Dallas Stars continue to linger around as they seemingly always do. fourth in the NHL in goals for, fourth in goals against. Good bunch on both sides of the ice, but I think defensively, that's always going to be their backbone, just kind of like the Minnesota Wild. But I think they have a lot better mix than the Minnesota Wild do of veterans and young players. The Wild have a good mix there as well, but I take Dallas's. You have Matt Duchene still leading the way after re-signing there. Huge loss for them that Tyler Seguin is hurt, but he was someone that was providing an impact. I know they'll be hoping to get him back and healthy. Jamie Benn continues to do good things while leading, but they also have, Rupe Hintz, Mason Marchment, Wyatt Johnson, Logan Stankoven. Jason Robertson's had a little bit of a disappointing year, but he's still a good impact player for them. And then on the defensive side of things, Miro Heiskanen, Asa Lindell, two of the best in the business. Lindell, a great shutdown guy, another underappreciated defenseman, in my opinion. Thomas Harley is a young blossoming defenseman. Ilya Lyubushkin is a good but not great stay-at-home defenseman. I mentioned during my preseason preview on the Central Division, I don't have as much confidence in the Dallas Stars as I used to following this offseason. I know they brought in Lyubushkin, they brought in Matt Dumba to kind of hold on to things defensively and be glue guys on the back end, but I'm not as confident about that bunch as I used to be. Kind of the same I feel about the Colorado Avalanche, but two teams that I do think are still ultimately going to end up in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Jake Ottinger and net, one of the best in the business. Young goaltender I've hung my hat on for a long time, so I think Dallas is ultimately going to find a way in. Utah next up in the standing, 17th in goals for the season, 12th in goals against. They're like a fun young bunch, fun and funky young bunch. They're not very good. It's kind of what I want the Blackhawks to be. Not good, but the young players are leading the way and making things exciting. I don't know if you really consider Clayton Keller or Nick Schmaltz to be young anymore at this stage of their careers, but they continue to be driving forces offensively. Plus, they've now added Dylan Guenther, who's been awesome this year. Logan Cooley has 30 points in 34 games. Mikhail Sergachev was huge for them, getting him on the back end. But other than him, it's a little bit shaky defensively. Karel Vejmelka has been good. I think he has a .910 save percentage this year, but the defense isn't really made to have success right here, right now. This Utah Hockey Club is still thinking long-term. I don't ultimately expect them to make the Stanley Cup playoffs, but they've been a lot of fun and showing the potential that they have with those young players offensively. St. Louis next up, 30th in goals for, 14th in goals against. Been a little bit of a disaster for them, but have been better since they brought in Jim Montgomery after he was canned from the Boston Bruins. I don't really understand how the St. Louis Blues team is 30th in the NHL in goals for per game. I know they don't have a ton of speed, but I thought they'd be better than that, especially with, Kyrou and Thomas, just another year of experience under their belt. I thought, they'd be a little bit better. They have the makeup to be better offensively than what they are. Buchnevich and Holloway, those two guys have been good, but no one else has been really making a consistent impact for them. They do have a lot of aging defensemen. Nick Leddy's only played 4 games this year. Torrey Krug, of course, out for the season. Justin Falk isn't getting any younger. Colton Parayko, the last few years haven't been great for him. Hasn't been great for the St. Louis Blues on the defensive side of things. And the term they've given out, they brought in, I do give them credit. They keep on trying, but I wonder if they're just digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper, like the Holloway, bring in Dylan Holloway and bring in Philip Broberg on, why can I think what those are called? You guys all know what I'm talking about if you're a hockey fan. They just continue to make aggressive moves, and I appreciate it, but I feel like at some point they're really going to pay for it. Bringing in a Cam Fowler, they're never giving up, and I think as a St. Louis Blues fan, there's something about that you can appreciate. We'll see if those moves wind up working. Like I said, they've been better the last month or so here, but still 16-4, well back in the division. It's going to be a uphill battle for them the rest of the way. And then there's the Nashville Predators, who, like I said, probably the biggest laughingstock in the NHL. Dead last in goals for per game, 32nd, 17th in goals against. They bring in all these big-name free agents, and it's almost kind of similar to what was happening with the Blackhawks under Luke Richardson. They bring in all these names, but they don't realize a lot of them are aging guys who don't have a ton of wheels, and there's just not, seemingly from afar, there doesn't seem to be a lot of speed going on with this Nashville Predators offense. Forsberg, Stamkos, O'Reilly, Marchessault, those are the guys who are leading the way. 3 of them, of course, 2 of them, I should say, brought in as notable offseason additions. None of them are really all that speedy. Philip Forsberg is definitely the best skater of the bunch, but Stamkos, an aging guy who was never really known for his speed. O'Reilly's not a fast player. Marchessault was never known really for his skating abilities either. So it seems like they're really struggling with speed over there. And the rest of the depth guys just haven't really been moving the needle all that bunch. Even UC Saros is kind of having a down year in terms of his usual expectations. So, and it's a real problem going on over there in Nashville. But there's kind of a little bit of a deeper look into each of the other 7 Central Division teams as we've reached the Christmas break. As far as my prediction, I think Winnipeg is they have the makeup to remain atop of the Central Division standings until the end of the year. Whether or not they're going to be able to keep playing like they are right here, right now, come playoff time, that's always been their issue for like the last decade. That's another question, but I do think they're going to end the regular season atop the standings. I think Colorado is going to surpass the Minnesota Wild. I think Colorado is going to get a little bit healthier. I just think they have more game breakers, more offensive weapons than the Minnesota Wild do. Now, whether or not that has them sitting prettier come playoff time than the Minnesota Wild, I don't know about that because I trust the Wild's defense and goaltending more than I trust Colorado's. But I do think Colorado outguns Minnesota Wild by the end of the year to take second place in the Central Division standings. I do think Minnesota holds on to that 3 spot, and Dallas finishes in at number 4, and each of those top 4 teams wind up qualifying for the Stanley Cup playoffs. There is my update on the Central Division as we've reached the holiday break. Coming up in just a moment before I wrap things up, I'll get into a fun Blackhawks Christmas list. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about the fine folks over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And FanDuel now has so many ways for you to pick up a W. Personally, I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. But FanDuel also has bets for player props, money lines, game specials, and so much more. And to go and take advantage of their amazing offer before Week 18 closes, be sure to visit FanDuel.com in order to join today. Again, that's FanDuel.com for your chance to win $250 if your first $5 bet wins. So make every moment more now with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen. Here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast so you can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. And you can easily find the link to Locked On Fantasy Hockey down in the description, or simply search on YouTube and wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 3, before I close out today's episode, I thought it would be fun to do a Blackhawks Christmas list with tis being the season and all, and just go through what I want for the Chicago Blackhawks the rest of the way in the 2024-2025 regular season. Seen some Blackhawks outlets kind of rolling and having fun with this idea, so I figure I'd kind of get my foot into the water, if you will, with this. The number one thing that I'm asking Santa for Christmas this year is to keep Connor Bedard healthy. And I know I don't want to say it was necessarily a fluke accident that got him injured last year. It was a learning moment for Connor Bedard. I don't think this is, something that people are thinking about, Connor Bedard getting hurt or whatnot, but I don't think it was something people were thinking about last year. The number one thing that I want for the Blackhawks the rest of the season is to keep Connor Bedard healthy, because I'll tell you what, the Blackhawks without Connor Bedard last year were so unwatchable, and it was right around this time of the year when he got hurt in New Jersey. And winter here in the Chicagoland area is already brutal enough. Cannot tolerate watching this Blackhawks team without Connor Bedard. So keeping my fingers crossed, asking Santa for this year to keep Connor Bedard healthy for all 82 games. The second thing that I'm asking for Christmas this year is to get Connor Bedard a winger / play him more consistently with Tyler Bertuzzi. This is something I've been preaching on the show through the opening 35 games now. I think the Blackhawks have played up to this point in time. But I figured, when Kyle Davidson brought in Tyler Bertuzzi in the offseason, the way that Bertuzzi plays the game, crashes the net, goes to the dirty areas. Bedard needed someone like that. Yeah, we need a skill guy for him to play with, but I also think he'd benefit from a power forward type of mold that goes to the dirty areas, puts his tape down, and plays the Zach Hyman kind of role, a la what he does with Connor McDavid up in Edmonton. So to see the Blackhawks go as long as they did without having Bertuzzi get an opportunity with Bedard, it had my jaw on the ground. Bedard did play with Bertuzzi a couple of times in the past month or so, and we did see him, bumped up to the top line along with Taylor Hall to play with Bedard in the last game prior to the Christmas break. I hope he continues to stay there because I really do think their games are going to work well and benefit one another. And Bertuzzi seems like he's finally found his groove here in Chicago after getting off to a real slow start. And Bedard hasn't had a consistent winger so far this year, and we're pretty close to being halfway done now with the season. And that's a huge issue. And I think a big reason why Bedard's numbers, they're still solid. He's still leading the team and still close to a point per game. But the reason they haven't escalated and taken that jump we wanted to see in year two is because he hasn't gotten a lot of help from guys who have been playing with him, and it's kind of been a revolving door there. So the second thing I want for Christmas is Bedard to have a consistent line mate. I hope it's Tyler Bertuzzi, and I think it's going to be Tyler Bertuzzi, but if it's not him, just find him someone that works well with him and let them establish chemistry with one another for a long period of time. The third thing I'm asking for Christmas this year is for Lukas Reichel to get a larger opportunity. And I've discussed recently, I've had some thoughts about Kyle Davidson, maybe since Lukas Reichel wasn't a draft pick of his, and the sheer number of prospects that he's accumulated and the amount of picks that the Blackhawks are still going to have these next couple of years. I have been pondering if Davidson's maybe leaving Lukas Reichel down in that fourth line role, because that's kind of the role he's going to have to play if he wants to be a piece of the puzzle here in Chicago, because he might not necessarily be a top six guy. And that's kind of what I said about Philip Kurashev over the last couple of years. And I said, yeah, it was great. He had good stuff, good connections with Connor Bedard last year and put up career high numbers by far, but he's not going to be a top six guy long-term for this Blackhawks team. So it's kind of like making yourself useful in other ways. And I feel like that's kind of what Kyle Davidson is having Lukas Reichel do right now, become more of a bottom six grinder, someone who can cycle the puck well in the offensive zone and be a little bit more rugged to play against. I don't know necessarily if I agree with that decision personally, but it seems like that's kind of what's going on. It's the only explanation to me in terms of why Lukas Reichel hasn't gotten more ice time, because he's certainly seemed capable, and we know he's the best skater with offensive abilities on this Blackhawks team. So for him to just be limited to that fourth line role and the lack of ice time that he's gotten, the lack of power play opportunities, I don't really understand it. So regardless, I still think he's deserving of more, and I would like him to have an opportunity to play with Frank Nazar, play with Connor Bedard a little bit more consistently, just so we can learn what type of player exactly Lukas Reichel is. And this is a perfect type of season to learn that type of stuff when the Blackhawks aren't going anywhere. That was kind of my gripe last year with Luke Richardson not giving Lukas Reichel an opportunity. It's like, listen, bud, we're going to lose games here regardless. We might as well cater to the young guys and figure out what we have. The only way to do that is to give Lukas Reichel more ice time in a larger role. So that's why I'm asking for Lukas Reichel to get a larger opportunity, so we can know for sure what type of player he is. Next thing I'm asking for Christmas this year pertaining to the Blackhawks is for them to finish in the top 15 in both special teams units. Currently, they're 10th on the power play, 4th on the penalty kill. They have been spectacular while shorthanded for the larger portion of the season, but especially over the last month or so. In the power play, hasn't been the best at drawing opportunities, but when they get there, they've been good at converting and getting the finished product. It would be awesome if this group would be able to finish in the top 15 in the NHL in both of those categories this year, and I certainly think they're capable at doing that. Fifth thing I'm asking for Christmas this year is for more consistency out of Teuvo Teravainen, because not only is that big for his confidence, which clearly that heavily impacts his game. He was vocal about having lost his confidence, and he went and put up like 5 points in a month and a half or something. It was terrible. But now seems like Teuvo's back on track where he wants to be, regularly making an impact. And that's huge not only for his confidence, but for this Blackhawks offense as a whole. Now that Sorensen has come in, they look a little bit more capable offensively. Bedard has responded well, 11 points over his last 9 games. Bertuzzi and Hall have certainly looked more alive. If we can add Teuvo Teravainen to that, it's another big boost to this Blackhawks offense. And also, there's the potential that if Teuvo keeps playing well, maybe he's the consistent winger that Connor Bedard has been looking for. Teuvo obviously has had his chances to be that earlier on in the season, hasn't gone to fruition, but maybe this recent surge of his gives him another opportunity up there, and maybe this time it finally works. Regardless, more consistency out of Teuvo Teravainen is going to be good things all across the board for this Blackhawks offense. Next thing I'm asking for Christmas is for Seth Jones to become more offensively dominant. We've seen it in stretches since he's joined the Blackhawks, but I really think under Anders Sorensen's style and how he wants defensemen to be involved in the rush and in the cycle, pinching up the boards to keep plays alive and joining in to make nice passes down below the dots, being more involved altogether. I think that's going to work wonders with how Seth Jones could play the game because he is a good skater. He is more of a naturally offensive-minded defenseman. I think that's going to suit his skill set perfectly. And with Alex Vlasic now being capable of being the shutdown defenseman, we're getting better play out of kind of just the supporting cast there in general. Connor Murphy's been better. Hopefully Alec Martinez will come back. Kevin Korchinski is up right now. He's been playing well. Nolan Allen's been playing well. I just think all these things together can lead to Seth Jones really flourishing and playing his true style of hockey for the first time, really, as a member of the Blackhawks. So I know it's been a little bit of a shaky start for him since he's returned from injury, but I think he's in a really good spot to have a nice run here the rest of the season. Next thing I'm asking for Christmas is healthy goaltenders, because that would mean Drew Commesso is allowed to continue developing properly in Rockford. I know Arvid Soderblom has been excellent this year. I still think Drew Commesso is going to be the goalie of the future for the Blackhawks. But the best thing for him is to remain in Rockford, not to be called up and down, like we saw out of Arvid Soderblom last year. And I don't think it was a surprise that his numbers at both levels were not very good whatsoever. Healthy goaltenders will allow the Blackhawks to keep their goalie prospects where they want for the time being and keep them developing. I know getting Brossoit back healthy will kind of add an interesting wrinkle into what they do for Arvid Soderblom, but just healthy goaltenders in general has been a problem for the Blackhawks the last few years. We'd like to see them dodge the injury bug in between the pipes the rest of the way. And then last but certainly not least, the last thing I'm asking for Christmas this year is a top 4 selection in the 2025 NHL Draft. Seems to me and to a lot of hockey fans and Blackhawks fans, there's a pretty clear-cut top 4 in the 2025 NHL Draft. As of right now, the Blackhawks are sitting pretty to finish inside the top 4, of course. And if they do, I feel real good about their chances of adding a potential game-breaking forward to this already deep prospect pool. I know the Blackhawks are going to go forward first with their opening selection in the 2025 NHL Draft. If they could get inside the top 4, that would be monumental for this rebuild and getting Connor Bedard a little bit more help up front. So there is my Blackhawks Christmas list. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way, you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can check me out on X, as always, at Jack Bushman2. But you got to go and follow my strictly Blackhawks account, at Talkin' Hockey, so you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, we're back to the regularly scheduled programming here on Locked On Blackhawks with Christmas now in the rearview mirror. Hope Christmas and the holidays went and is going wonderfully for all of you out there. Until next time, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.